Guys, if you're anything like me, looking at maps has always been a huge part of my preparation and execution for my outdoor adventures. I have been using GoHunt digital maps on desktop and mobile for quite some time now. I have used these maps for years for my in-depth e-scouting tactics and my methods of using offline maps during the hunt. Well, now I'm happy to report GoHunt Maps now covers all 50 states. There's two ways to get the GoHunt map. You can sign up for a GoHunt Insider membership and get the benefits of all the draw odds, harvest statistics, unit breakdowns, strategy articles, as well as access to the 50 state maps, plus savings on gear for being an Insider member. Like right now, they're doing double points. For an Insider membership, sign up now at GoHunt.com, use the JScott promo code, and get a $50 GoHunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. You can also just sign up for a GoHunt Explorer membership, and that gives you access to 50 states for $50. Use the JScott promo code. Guys, also don't forget to get a 10% discount on gear at the GoHunt Gear Shop by using the JScott promo code. You can also reach out to my friend Cody Nelson of 20 plus years, either by phone or by text. 602-399-3699. Make sure you tell him I sent you. I want to thank GoHunt.com for their loyal sponsorship of my podcast. We're over 815 episodes in, and they've been with me since the beginning. I also want to thank Kuiu Ultralight Hunting for their sponsorship of this podcast. They provide the gear that I use on all of my hunting adventures. You can go to the Kuiu website directly, kuiu.com, order directly. They're a direct-to-consumer company. They make the best gear in the hunting industry, and I've been a loyal supporter of theirs for years. Also, phonescope.com. Go to phonescope.com, use the JScott or JScott22 promo code, and you're going to get a 10% discount at Phonescope. Guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for supporting me. If you have any questions or you'd like to send me a comment, the best way to do that is on my Instagram account at JScottOutdoors. Again, let's get right to this episode, and thanks for your support.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is your guest host, Cliff Gray. Colorado rifle, deer, and elk seasons are coming up here, so I wanted to continue with some episodes to get some Colorado guys on that could help all the folks that are coming out west to Colorado to take advantage of those rifle seasons and hunting opportunities. Like the last episode I did, in this episode we touch on current conditions in Colorado, what folks should expect for first rifle season and second and third. I'm also going to pick Ryan, this guest's brain, on last minute things folks can do to prepare and some tips and tricks that anyone can implement on these hunts coming up. Today I have Ryan MscSparran, the new owner of Budges Wilderness Lodge in the Flat Tops Wilderness area. Ryan, I know from my experience with him, has extensive guiding time in over-the-counter elk units. And in my opinion, Budges' location and the experience that one can offer out there is truly one of a kind. We'll get into it more, but I have a little history myself there. But before I get carried away with my thoughts, I'm going to let Ryan do a brief introduction of himself and his current operation that he just purchased this last season, right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Cliff. Yeah, my wife and I just purchased Budges Wilderness Lodge this past May. And we're excited to be the new owners of an almost 100-year-old lodge and kind of hopefully carry it through this next chapter. And I've been guiding there for several years. I know the place pretty well, and I've been guiding in the Flat Tops for almost 14 years. But look forward to this next chapter for Budges.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. I always thought, like, just to give everybody, the listeners, my thoughts on Budges is I always thought it was like an underutilized, super unique asset. And I don't just mean in the Flat Tops. I really don't think there's that many places that offer that just cool experience, you know, this in the summer and the fall that Budges can offer. I mean, it's really, you're truly in the wilderness, but you also have a pretty cool facility. I think the last time I was in there, Ryan, was probably, the previous owner to you. When did he buy it?
So he bought it in 2016.
Yeah, so it was actually before that. I mean, time just flies by, man. But it was before that, and it wasn't in the best of shape, but it was still just like an incredible location. It's beautiful right on the river there. And at that time, for sure, it was being underutilized, probably for a bunch of different reasons. But from what I hear over the last few years, the previous owner to you, and I'm sure you're continuing that momentum, is you guys have really improved it. And I wanted to specifically point that out, Ryan, because when I was Googling Budges, there's still like there's like a couple little lingering, like kind of poor reviews on it. And I want everybody to know that was from back in the day. All I've heard is positive stuff lately.
Yeah, you hit it spot on. It was really underutilized for a lot of years. It had kind of gone downhill. And I remember when the previous owner purchased it in 2016, I remember at that time thinking, oh man, that place has so much potential. It's literally at the wilderness boundary where the road dead ends into the wilderness, 100 yards from the upper White River. So in terms of just hunting and fly fishing and all the adventures that you can base out of there, it's just like you said, really unique location. And then so when my friend Nelson, who's been managing it here for the previous owner for the past 6 years, mentioned to me that it was, potentially being sold again. I immediately started talking to my wife about it. We started kicking the idea around, and I can't believe we're finally here, but we're super excited about it.
Yeah, cool. It's cool that you guys took the jump, man. So we'll just jump in here. Like the last episode I did with your flat tops and neighbors, my old business. We talked briefly about September, man. So let me know how it went. I'm kind of curious, Ryan. Are you guys still? Did you fish a lot during September still, and archery elk hunt? And then are you guys doing any bear hunting or other stuff? Kind of fill me in on how it went and your thoughts. From what I've heard, I haven't been in Colorado in the last couple of months, but it was kind of a little bit of a unique season, at least when I was chatting with the other guys.
Yeah, September was beautiful, and we did run guided fishing trips really all the way through September. In fact, the fishing is still just lights out up there right now, even in early October. So we were doing some fishing as well as archery and muzzleloader elk hunting. We do not do any standalone bear hunting. We did have a couple of folks kill bears, but those are mostly opportunistic kind of things. Folks will bring a bear tag along if they're elk hunting. It's been a warm, sunny, kind of beautiful September in terms of weather and everything else.
Right. And it sounds like just a little more moisture than typical, huh? At least across the region.
We had a really wet summer, lots of rain. The grass in a lot of places is waist high. And that's it's made for a beautiful fall. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm actually and this is going to be more in the context of like do it yourself, kind of over the counter archery elk hunting, and your thoughts on it. Not to speak for you, Ryan, but I think you've actually done a fair amount of it, right? You've guided archery hunters in the flat tops, and you've done some personal archery hunting in the past.
Yes. Yeah. I've done a lot of hunting in over the counter units in the flat tops, both guiding and personally too.
Yeah. I think from our previous discussions, like I know some of the areas that you've hunted, and over the years we've been exposed to some of the same elk. And did you catch the episode I did with the guys yesterday?
I was able to turn it on for a few minutes after it was released yesterday and listen to a bit of it. Yeah.
So one of the questions I asked Evan, and I want to get your insights on it, is this is like one of the biggest enigma of over-the-counter elk, and I think a lot of people coming out west for archery season run into this, is they see a lot of the media around archery elk hunting, that's out there, and they're expecting way more vocalizations than they experience. And what's weird is so in my life, I've been in areas where they were more vocal in general, then less so. And then all my time in the flat tops, it seemed really spotty. That was kind of my experience with it. I have my own kind of theory on why that is. I actually noticed it on an Idaho hunt I went on just a couple weeks ago that had a really similar type of population dynamic. Same deal, just just less vocalizations than one might expect. Do you have any theories on that, Ryan? And then the other thing is, have you had a totally different experience? That's possible also. So just give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my experience has been in terms of opportunities at having encounters with vocal elk and calling in bulls. You've got to work hard for them in these over-the-counter units, and particularly here in the flat tops. It's if you're out here on a 5-day, 6-day, week-long hunt, you're going to work your tail off for a couple or maybe a handful of opportunities at elk like that. That's been my experience. And you mentioned it being spotty, and it's funny that's been your experience too. It seems like a lot of the places that we hunt in these over-the-counter units, you'll have a bull fired up one day in one spot, and then the next day it'll be totally silent. You'll get back to camp that night and talk to one of your friends who maybe was hunting in a different drainage, and they had them fired up in a different area. And for whatever reason, that does seem to be pretty common, I think.
Right. Kind of a universal, experience for a lot of folks. And I think it's good for people to know that, Ryan, because I dealt with a little bit in my outfitting and guiding there. It helps if guys have that expectation. I mean, the elk are there and they're still rutting. I mean, those cows are still going to have calves, the next year. So they are rutting, but having, kind of an expectation that you're not going to be in like a rut fest every day, I think it actually helps guys, because it's going to change your tactics and how you go after those type of elk. If you just, before we jump to another subject, I mean, do you have a couple tips for archers that, now the season's over, but that are coming out next year, and maybe they went out this last September and they came home a little frustrated? Do you have a couple tips for them or thoughts that might help them in the future?
Yeah, I think, two of the things that I always try and keep in mind and to tell folks that I'm hunting with is, one, be prepared to work hard. Like you said, expectations, I think, are a big part of it. And then two, just be persistent and stay positive. There's going to be a lot of downtime on any archery elk hunt, where you're taking naps and sleeping through part of the day, and just beating your way up and down ridges trying to locate elk and doing glassing and whatever all those things are that you can do to locate elk. Just stay positive and be persistent and keep at it. And whether you've got 5 or 6 or 7 days, make sure that you're taking advantage of all the time you've got. Because like I said, you keep working and you will get those opportunities, and you locate elk and you'll get into a bull that is fired up, and you'll get to call them in. And whether you get to kill an elk and take one home or not, that's what archery elk hunting is all about to me. It's those close encounters and talking to elk. There's nothing like it in the world. It's the most exciting thing in the world to have a 700-pound animal screaming its head off and coming at you. You'll go out there and work for it. If you work your tail off for an entire week just to get that encounter maybe 1 or 2 times throughout the week in an over-the-counter unit. And but it's worth it, because it's an absolute blast, and there's nothing in the world that makes me come unglued like that. I think just that positive attitude and persistence, and keep using all the tools in your toolkit that you've got to locate elk and keep after it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice, man. And I think you touched on one thing there, Ryan, that is important for people to realize. Like, even for guys that have been doing this a ton and chasing that type of elk, if you're getting into elk and you're getting to play with vocalizations and play with bulls, you have to view that as like partial to, mostly success in these type of areas. Because to me, it's like, once you start getting where you can do that, like every time you come out west, you go into an over-the-counter unit, every time, if like every couple days or every other day, I'm going to get an elk, you'll eventually kill one with a bow. But like, that's the hard part, trying to be consistently getting, just getting in where you're figuring them out. So cool. That's all good advice. Do you have any, I'm always curious. I always ask, and it's a basic question, and I know the listeners are going to gonna ask, do you have like a go-to calling strategy that you use with these type of elk?
Yeah, particularly with elk and over-the-counter units. I guess to put it short and sweet, is my strategy is just to get as close as absolutely as possible before I start talking to them. And I'll use whatever methods I can to locate a bull, whether that's doing some bugling early in the morning just to try and get one to sound off, or glassing, or whatever else it is. But once I locate a bull, or at least have a good idea of where a bull is, my next step is to shut up and to get as close as I can to that bull before I start talking again. I think a lot of times, in order to get these bulls really fired up or pissed off, you got to be right there in their bedroom and really present a threat to them, make them think that there's another bull right there. And if you start bugling at them and walking your way into them, I feel like a lot of times when that happens, what they're going to do is they'll bugle back in a lot of scenarios, but they're just going to keep moving further and further away, and you keep bugling, they'll keep bugling back. And instead of playing that game, I just like to get right up there, inside 100, inside 50 yards if I can, if I know right where they are, before I say anything, and really catch them off guard. And I think a lot of times that can really trigger a bull, and piss him off and make him want to come take a look.
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that type of tactic, because I would say, almost universally among the guys that I know are consistent archery hunters, in that that Eagle, Garfield, Pitkin County type of area, like locals who are just, doesn't matter what the status of the elk herd is, like they're still killing elk or close to it every year, with archery equipment. They almost all have that same mindset. And it's not like I don't want to tell the listeners like that's the only way to do it, but in that area, man, like that is pretty consistent amongst guys that get it figured out that is what they do. And I think you hit on a lot of the reasoning of why. I tend to think, and tell me your opinion on it, Ryan. I tend to think one of the problems, if you're calling from a long distance and you start moving around once like a bull starts to know where you're at, is I think they see you, or they see a lack of what they're looking for.
Right. Yep. I think that has a lot to do with it. They want to see another elk when they hear one. And it's interesting that you found that to be common, in these hunting in these type of areas. And I've seen it so many times where, folks want to bugle at them because it's fun, to hear a bull bugle back at you. It's just so stinking exciting. And there's such a temptation just to scream back at him as you work your way in and hear him scream back. And I think, it's easier said than done, but just to be able to put that bugle tube away and get as close as you possibly can. And sometimes, you might not even have to get those calls back out again. You may be able to stalk in there for a shot without saying anything. And maybe that could be the ideal scenario.
Right. Yeah. And you're open to that.
Absolutely. Yep. I think sometimes not saying anything can be the best strategy for sure.
Yeah, I think that I hear you, and I have the same feeling, which I feel mixed on, man, because like calling them in is part of it, but there is an element over the years that what I've seen with those type of elk, if you can, use your calls to locate them or just glass them up, and use the fact that they're acting a little bit, their guard's a little bit down. At least their guard is. If they got cows, the cow's guard may not be, but you can use that to your advantage and just spot and stalk kill them. Or, the other thing is that you kind of know, they get a little pattern that time of year, so you can intercept them or whatever. But
right.
It's just kind of a bummer because you want to say, no, the effective way is to call them in. At least I want to,
Yeah.
But sometimes I think you're right, man. I think you got to keep that in your toolbox that, hey, let's just sneak in there and kill one without letting them even know we're here,
Right. Yeah.
Cool, man. So we'll jump through archery, and we'll start talking about rifle seasons. Let me, what are the current conditions, man? Like it's funny because your introduction of Budges and you're like, oh, it's at the end of the road. Or, it's on the road next to the wilderness. Yeah. Technically it's, what is it? Just, it's like technically outside of the wilderness, but I think like the way I view it and the way I think the way to depict it in, my mind is that it's really in the wilderness, and that road is, it's a good road getting in there. Everybody can get in there to your business and stuff, but it's a haul. I mean, it's remote, it's as remote as anywhere in Colorado. And I've been in there in first rifle, and conditions can be super variable. So give us an update on what it looks like now, and what people who are going out there, either if they're hunting the flat tops or other regions in Colorado, what they should expect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we are at the end of a long Forest Service road, 40 miles from the nearest pavement. And the road actually kind of cherry stems into the wilderness a bit. So we are surrounded by three sides by designated wilderness. And it's been an interesting year. As much rain as I can ever remember seeing in the flat tops. There's water everywhere. Like I said, the grass is as tall as I can remember seeing it. And I think because of that, one of the challenges this year is going to be, there's really nothing concentrating the elk. I mean, there is food and there is water available everywhere you look. From the tops of the mountains down to the river, there's great habitat everywhere. And I think, some of the challenge is going to be just locating elk, because they're still, going to be in small groups. They're going to be spread out, and first rifle anyway, I think it's a tough time of year, especially with the season dates the way they are now. This year, first rifle season opens on October 15th. I mean, we're smack dab in the middle of October, which means this is a post-rut hunt. And a lot of those bulls are going to be, they're done with the rut. They've done their work. They're going to be off on their own, and they're in recovery mode. And they're going to be doing what they can just to hang tight and not, move as little as possible, go somewhere where they feel safe, where they've got food and water and cover, and they're recovering, trying to put weight back on. And so I think, for the most part, you're going to be talking about hunting loner bulls this time of year. And especially when the elk are spread out anyway, that means it's going to take some work to find them.
Yeah, I think that's, I in my mind, Ryan, I always associated with like this massive amount of incredible habitat per capita of elk, in the flat tops. It's, in my view, it's the highest in anywhere I've ever been in the 48 states. I think that, the flat tops is known as having a huge elk herd, but habitat per capita of elk, it's one of the highest. You know what I mean? Like, there is good elk habitat almost everywhere on that topography. I think it goes for some of the other areas in Colorado too. I think, the San Juans, if they don't have snow, it's the same thing. Your elk are super dispersed. I think it's a pretty big challenge for folks when you don't have. I mean, over the years we had some awesome first rifles, but generally they were because we had an October 5th 3 feet of snow on the top type of deal. You know what I mean? And so you just had that concentration. So everybody, and it doesn't look like between now and when the season starts, you guys are going to have good weather, right?
Yeah. Right now, the way it's looking is the forecast looks like it's going to stay, pretty warm and sunny, and nothing really that's going to, concentrate these elk, push them off the tops onto those south-facing canyon walls and stuff like that. They're going to, I think, stay spread out, and which makes, I think, first rifle season, the way the season dates in Colorado are now, I think it's it is quite possibly the toughest hunting season of the year. And which is funny because it's also, I think, the most popular. I mean, we receive more inquiries about first rifle. We see more public hunting pressure during first rifle than maybe any other season now. And I think a lot of that has to do with, second rifle season this year doesn't open till, it's darn near Halloween. It's the end of October. And I think that pushes a lot of people back toward first rifle when maybe the weather's a little nicer and they don't have to deal with access issues and snow on the roads and all that, which I understand. But yeah, it's a tough hunt. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, man. And it's funny you observe that same thing because, and we'll go over that right now just so the listeners understand. So, and let me know if, because you're in the kind of the bordering units to where I was for many years. So there might be some little differences, Ryan. So just chime in. But essentially what you have there is I had an archery season that was over the counter. Your archery season is draw, correct?
That's right. Yep, we do operate a little bit in an over the counter unit, but almost all of our archery hunting is done in a draw unit.
Yeah, and we'll touch before we're done with this draw discussion. We'll touch back on that. But just so the listeners understand, first rifle is a draw also, but very high quota, right? Like it's essentially over the counter in the sense that you can get a tag if you want one. Is that correct?
It might as well be. Yeah. There were, I want to say close to 2,000 tags left over after the primary draw this year.
Yeah. And that seems like that's been the case for a decade now or so. Right. And so there's that for first rifle, and then second and third rifle are over the counter. And then fourth season is a draw. And then you have basically overlapping draw deer season, second, third, and fourth. And so your units have that same structure, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And you point out something that I observed too, and I think it's important for people to realize this, is that I think when they look at those seasons and that structure, they see over the counter second, over the counter third, and they think that first rifle is actually going to have less hunting pressure because it's not technically over the counter.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think a lot of folks assume that because it's technically a draw hunt that it's going to see fewer people. And at one time in the past that may have been the case. I think historically when second rifle season dates fell a little bit earlier, that maybe did tend to be a little more popular. But at least the way the season dates have fallen here the last few years. That first rifle season we see, I'd say there's a public trailhead just down the road from us. And I'd say the last few years, there have been double the amount of vehicles at the trailhead during first rifle as opposed to second rifle season.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. We had the same, I think pretty much the same deal. We had a little more exposure to deer hunting country, I think, and we can touch on that too, Ryan. So I feel like the other seasons, like that was you had a little bit of bump up just from public pressure that were really primarily deer hunters, but like, and we didn't touch on this, but your operation is really outside of the lodge hunts you're doing a lot of horseback stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we've got the main lodge, which is has vehicle access to, and we run a lot of hunts just out of the main lodge there, of course. But then we have a dozen permitted drop campsites throughout the wilderness area as well. And of course, we don't use all of those on any given year. We'll typically have 4 or 5 of those camps set at any given time, and we kind of rotate each year which ones we use in order to distribute the pressure a little bit and utilize the area. But yeah, getting out there and doing a lot of hunting in areas that are accessed by horseback.
Yeah, and the reason I hit that, I wasn't trying to get totally off track, but what I noticed during first rifle, and tell me if you kind of noticed the same thing, is that the stuff that was remote. I mean, you're a lot of where you're taking guys and you're hunting. The public can hunt it, but the guys that are competing with you, particularly during first rifle, those guys are working pretty hard. They're in my view, I would still like archery season and then into first rifle. I would see public hunting pressure that was like always on the border of like capability to get an elk out. Like they were pushing it. you know what I mean? Like they were getting in far, and I would see that pressure in first rifle for sure. That type of pressure is higher than any other time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely. And, I think maybe a lot of that has to do with the weather. In first rifle season, especially, you look at the forecast this year, it's going to be nice and folks are willing to strap on a backpack and get further into the wilderness area. Whereas you get into those second and third rifle season hunts and you can expect snow on the ground. And I think people kind of tend to err toward, staying at their base camps with a wall tent and a wood stove and all that comfy gear.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's be honest, Ryan, like if you're backpack hunting in that country into third or fourth season, you're a stud. And you're a masochist too.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's pretty much what it comes down to. And I actually know a couple guys. There's a guy that used to guide for me, Cody, that does it, and I'm like, man, you're a stud, man, and he pulls it off. But in general, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I don't know that's not the hunt you want to start out on if you're a backpack hunter.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely not a hunt you'd want to get your feet wet on. That's for sure. That said, though, I mean, I love hunting third and even fourth rifle season, and I've done some backpack hunts fourth rifle season, and there's no doubt it can be extremely effective. But you're going to suffer a little bit too.
Yeah. That's cool that you've done them, man. We're gonna circle back to that because I want to hear about it. So I've done a little bit of it, and then of course, like I ran camps later than I think what you guys do at Budges. So we probably have some funny stories we can talk about in that regard. But just to finish up the draw deal, Ryan, because I know that you guys are in unique, or not unique, but different than I was in the sense that your archery units are draw, but they're still not that hard to draw. And so give the listeners a rundown on that. I think it applies to your units, and it applies to now a lot of units in Colorado. Just about how you can maybe bump up the quality of the unit you're hunting just by just a couple points.
Yeah, it's a good point. So at Budges, we operate primarily in a unit that's it's a draw for archery and muzzleloader. So while a lot of our neighboring units in the flat tops are over the counter, we're in a draw unit. And, for a non-resident, it takes about 2 preference points to draw the archery tag in our unit. And so even though you're talking about a draw hunt, you're not talking about a really long wait, and especially considering the fact that a lot of folks are planning elk hunts now 2 years in advance anyway. It's something I like to encourage folks to think about. You can buy an over-the-counter archery tag and go hunting this year. But in the meantime, there's nothing stopping you from applying for a preference point. And with a couple of preference points, just the difference in quality from an over-the-counter unit to just, we're not talking about a premier, Colorado elk unit that's going to take you a decade or more to draw. Just a couple of points. The difference in quality is pretty apparent, and we don't see a ton of archery pressure here, unlike a lot of those over-the-counter units, and it makes for a really fun elk hunt. And I think because of that, the elk do tend to be a little bit more vocal, and we've had really good success on our archery and our muzzleloader hunts. And those muzzleloader hunts, for a non-resident, we're talking about maybe 4 to 5 preference points to draw that hunt. But yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful time to be in that country. Like kind of piggybacking on what you're saying about why first rifle is so it tends to be a little more competitive and there's more pressure, and that's that it's easier to drive places in Colorado. It's easier to get over the passes. The mountains are freaking beautiful. Yeah, weather can be a little volatile, but nothing compared to the late October or something like that. So
right.
I think it's a great opportunity. And what you touch on, Ryan, I think it applies to so many, basically every, all the primary species in Colorado, deer and elk. There's no reason to me why guys should not get just a couple points. I call it like the value play in hunting in Colorado is 1 or 2 points, burn them every 1 or 2 years. Like when you have, like, that's the value play in my mind. I know that you've hunted, I believe you have, just kind of following your social media and stuff. You've hunted have you hunted any like high point elk units or high point deer units recently?
No, it's funny you say that. And that's exactly my strategy, just personally for my own hunts. I like to collect a point or two and burn them every couple of years. You don't need a decade's worth of preference points to kill a good mule deer buck in Colorado. And the same goes for elk. Just a couple of points can make a huge difference in terms of the units and the doors that opens up for you.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And the thing is like a couple points, the incremental quality of hunt is fairly, there's a fairly high relative difference. Now, if you go from 4 points to 12 points, there's almost no difference in my experience. It's wild,
Yep. There's absolutely a point of diminishing returns there where, you can keep saving points, but you're going to have, I think, a far better experience if you go on 3 hunts instead of, saving up points for 12 years and going on 1.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so like if guys want to hunt, do a guided archery hunt or drop camp archery hunt in like a unit like yours, they can just get with you a couple years ahead of time. Nowadays, that's kind of how the booking world is and how planning is anyways. So it's going to be a couple years out anyway. So they can, you can guide guys through that process, or they can figure it out, but they got to get a couple points to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it takes a couple points to draw the archery tag, but it's absolutely worth it. And folks are comfortable with the application process if they've done it before. Just they can get with us, and we can help them lock in that spot. And for folks who are intimidated by that application and draw process here in Colorado, we actually have a preference point program where we will actually handle the whole thing for them.
Nice. So you'll do that, dude. You're going all over the place, man. You're going to be too busy.
We got, it's a cool thing. I think when I first started looking at Budges and just where the outfit operated, at first glance, I thought, it's kind of a bummer that it's not an over-the-counter elk unit. How do it's just makes it tough to sell elk hunts. But, the more I've spent time in the unit and just seeing what 2 preference points does in terms of the difference that makes, man, I'm all about it.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. People would always say that to me over the years, Ryan. They'd be like, well, you're always going to be a proponent of over-the-counter elk tags. And I was always like, no, not really. You know what I mean? Because I did a lot of other guiding and outfitting in species that were really high points to draw. And I always was busy. Like it wasn't like I needed to book more sheep hunts or something. You know what I mean? And I wanted it to be like there'd be more sheep tag. So I think that's kind of a little misnomer with like the guiding and outfitting community. I think people, if they polled all the outfitters out there, particularly we can get into that a little bit more, but guys that have, fairly large businesses where I don't know, we haven't talked about, what you're doing personally and stuff, but like a business like Budges, or akin to the business I had, like those are not hobby businesses. This is really your full-time job, if not more. I understand you might be doing other things, but in terms of the concentration that goes into a business like that, it's a lifestyle plus type of thing. You know what I mean? And most outfitters that are in that world, I think they're trying to think long term about their areas and just taking down the variability of their hunts. I think a lot of them would be open to a lot of that country going to a couple points or whatever. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think, as a business, would it make it easier to, for us to sell an elk hunt if we had over the counter tags in our unit? Sure. It'd make things less complicated, but I will take being in a draw unit any day of the week. Just the difference in quality. It makes it fun to guide. It makes it fun to hunt. We've got to plan 2 years in advance, and we've got to prepare our hunters for that. But yeah, I'll take that all day long. It's a fun place to be, and actually funny you mentioned jobs. My day job before I took on this project was doing marketing for guides and outfitters. I do digital marketing, and I've worked for a lot of outfitters in Wyoming, and there it takes 3+ years to draw an elk tag. It's something that's absolutely overcomable. You work with your clients on it, and you plan a few years in advance, and for that difference in quality versus an over-the-counter unit, I think in my mind, I wouldn't go back to operating in an over-the-counter unit if I had that option.
Yeah. And I guess one thing for the listeners to understand is it is like the over-the-counter opportunity for people, particularly people who are just getting into the sport or whatever you want to call this lifestyle. I think is a better term for it. But the over-the-counter stuff gives people a great opportunity to just be able to go buy a tag and go. Yeah. Right. But yeah, I'm totally with you that it's just a couple points or whatever. That's easy, man. Time flies by. You'll have it's crazy because all the years of guiding, Ryan, I've just been accumulating points. Like I open up my little spreadsheet, I keep track of points, and I'm like, holy shit, yeah. Time flies. But yeah, no, I hear you. And so we kind of, sorry to get off on a caveat, but I think that was really useful for guys to understand that. And that goes for, that like you were talking about mule deer in Colorado. I feel the same way. Like 1 or 2 points, guys, go hunting and start learning an area, learn a unit. Are you guys doing any deer hunting out of Budges? Like your country's a little higher than what I used to guide in.
Yeah, what I usually tell folks is that the habitat where we're doing most of our hunting it's 90% elk habitat, 10% mule deer habitat. And that's not to say, we don't have plenty of deer around. There's certainly some good bucks, and it's the kind of thing though where I look at mule deer hunting in our area more as an opportunistic kind of thing. If folks are coming on an elk hunt and they have a deer tag in their pocket as well, great. There's a good chance we'll kill a nice buck, but I'm not selling. I wouldn't sell somebody just on a standalone deer hunt where we are. I think there's better places they can go if they want to go just to do a dedicated mule deer hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. And what might be, are they still doing that high country hunt, that wilderness hunt up there?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So in the Flat Tops Wilderness area, there's an early rifle deer tag during the beginning of September. It's a very limited tag. And honestly, I haven't looked at it recently, but I want to say it takes somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 points for a non-resident to draw that mule deer tag. But if, for folks who do have some deer points to burn, that can be a really good option too. Hunting those bucks up high above timberline in early September with a rifle could be a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. So that tag, I think it draws like pretty high points. I've guided it a few times and had great success, and then I've also had really hard hunts. But that country, man, I don't know. So just a little history. It's kind of funny. Me and Ryan were talking about before we got on here. Our lives are. It kind of reminds me of like the helix of like a DNA strand. Like Ryan's on one side and I'm on the other side, and we're like spinning around like the same people, the same businesses, and everything else. But we haven't interacted a whole lot. But anyways, the original outfitter that you worked for, more on kind of it's to the east of you in terms of the flat tops, back over in that country, that country had more of a mix of deer and elk stuff, right? So kind of what's on that in terms of deer. But I used to always talk to Larry, the guy that you originally worked for, and those deer up there, like, it's amazing to me, the mule deer and the flat tops. They have very good genetics, but at certain times of the year, particularly once they rip their velvet off, like, where do they go?
Oh,
you know
man.
what I mean? Do you have a theory, Ryan?
Yeah. So when I first started,
don't tell them like specific coordinates. I'm saying.
oh
like,
yeah, no. Yeah, no. When I first started guiding in the flat tops, yeah, I was working for an outfitter just over the mountain from us, just to the east, and it's funny that just the difference from that area, which is, as the crow flies, not very far to where we are at Budges. There was some very good mule deer hunting over there, but even still. I always told folks that, it's a low density deer area. And there are some just slammer bucks for sure. They've got those, Eagle, Garfield County genetics. I mean, these are, big mountain mule deer. But you could go 5 days and not see one.
Yeah.
And just, I always liked giving folks that expectation before they came hunting with us that, there is a potential to kill a really nice mule deer, and there's also a chance that we might not see a deer all week. And they're just a low density animal in that area for whatever reason. And like you said, there'd be times where you'd see them up above timberline, big, fat, and happy in the willows all summer long. And then as soon as they strip that velvet off, they just poof, they disappear. And I think a lot of them spend time in the timber. And they're just in areas where they're not visible a lot of the time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think they just get into these little spots that are almost impossible to even if you're just specifically trying to glass them up in little timbers, slivers, and that sort of thing. There's so much like canopy where they're living. Essentially, it's just hard to find them.
Yeah.
So they go into spots like that, and like you say, I mean, there's world-class deer in that wilderness area and in other wilderness areas there, but people got to realize, like, it's a low density deal, and that's kind of a hard message to send, because particularly with like social media and that sort of thing, I mean,
right,
you will see some insanely big deer, and I think people have a hard time realizing that it's not a steady, continuous like graph, right? It's not like, oh, like, man, if they're killing deer like that, it should be easy to go there and kill like a nice 150, 160 inch 4x. That's all I want to kill. It's like, well, that might be really friggin' hard,
Yep.
So it's odd that way,
Right.
It can produce them, but it's, like you say, very, very low density.
Yeah.
But, go ahead.
Oh, I think, a lot of it just comes down to expectations and what folks are interested in doing. There's definitely places where you can go and hunt somewhere with a much higher deer density, and some of the desert units or sagebrush units and things like that, where you can get up on a glassing point and you can see deer all day long. And, maybe not kill the biggest buck in the world. And, sometimes it comes down to deciding whether, is that the kind of mule deer hunting experience I'm after, something that's a little more fast action where I'm seeing more animals, or am I willing to go up on the mountain and sit there and wait for a week and knowing that I might not see that buck. Colorado offers so many different experiences when it comes to mule deer hunting. And I love mule deer hunting. I grew up doing it. But yeah, it's from one area of the state to another. It can be totally different in good ways.
Yeah. And it's always changing a little bit. You know what I mean? For me, Ryan, like, I would be lying if I didn't say I enjoy mule deer hunting and guiding mule deer hunts more than elk hunts. I don't know why. That just is the case. I've always been kind of infatuated with them, particularly big ones. They're a really cool animal. I think if I was being honest, part of that is because, there's always the chance in areas that you can get a tag pretty readily, at least right now in Colorado. Yeah, we can, everybody can talk about how things have changed, sure. But I still believe right now there are areas in Colorado where you can kill like world-class deer on a couple points, right?
Yep.
What other species and opportunity can you do that in without it really being, just a dream? Like, you can do it in elk. We never killed bulls this big, but I've got a pair of sheds from a bull that survived in the flat tops, and he's like a 370-inch bull. They're there. But they're pretty, you don't see a lot of them. Like, they're, you know what I mean?
Right.
But those deer, you always have the chance in a lot of different areas in Colorado if you work at it. So I always was addicted to them in that regard. But it sounds like you've hunted them a while. What are your thoughts on, has the deer hunting changed in your mind? Do you have any thoughts on that or where it's going?
Yeah, I do enjoy mule deer hunting. I'm the same way, Cliff. There's just something about big mule deer that's a lot of fun. I don't know what it is. I really enjoy hunting them. I think maybe some of it's the visual aspect. I like glassing and I like looking at just watching animals, and there's usually a lot of that in mule deer hunting, and they're fun animals to watch. They're cool. I think you made a good point. There's opportunities to kill mule deer in Colorado in a lot of different places and without a lot of preference points. A good buck can come out of any unit in Colorado. You might have to hunt for a few years or give it a few tries. But they're there. And that's one of the fun things about it. Save up a point or two or three and go hunting and keep doing that. And, eventually you'll find a good one. I don't feel like I have too much insight into how mule deer hunting has changed over the years, whether, the good old days are here or before, I'm not sure, but I still enjoy mule deer hunting. In fact, I've got a third rifle tag that I'm looking forward to using this year once we close up shop at Budges.
Oh, good deal, man. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. Like, I think sometimes it's hard to kind of sift through the reality of what's going on. My personal perception, I will throw it out there, is that I think it's still the good old days of mule deer hunting. My personal opinion on some of the management and stuff is maybe those good old days are short-lived, but I think right now there's a lot of positive things about it. So I'll leave it at that, man. I think people should enjoy that. And the other thing is, like what you're talking about, where you can go multiple times, you can get good at it.
Right.
You can get good at it, and you can get where you figure out, how these deer are moving around and stuff, and the guy can get good at it and have a lot of fun. So I'm very positive on it for the time being. I think it's a great opportunity for folks.
Yep.
Man, before we covered a bunch, but before I've jumped topics all over the place, man, on rifle elk, because I know that's what a lot of the listeners are coming out for. You talked about how these bulls are it's post-rut, and they're starting to go off into their, what I call kind of bull country, and I'm sure you probably exposed to that over there in Budges area too. What are your thoughts on just last minute advice for guys? Where are you going to look for bulls during first, second, third rifle? And any other, just like little tips that might help guys, Ryan?
Yeah. I would come into this hunt, just with the expectation that it's going to be a post-rut hunt. And there are times that first rifle season, especially, we'll still see some bulls with the cows. Typically, in my experience anyway, they tend to be some of the smaller satellite bulls still hanging around and seeing if they can find breeding opportunities. But for the most part, especially those mature bulls, they're going to be off by themselves. And typically I'm looking for them in places where they've got all the things they need. That's, food, cover, water within a very short distance. And where they've just spent, a month and a half just working their tails off, not doing much eating at all. And they've lost a ton of weight, and they're looking to recover. And so, looking for bulls in places where they don't have to do much. And really, I think what that means in terms of, tips for folks who are looking to find them is really, really maximizing those early morning and late evening hours, sitting behind the glass, locating where those bulls are. And for me, that means, I don't want to be getting to my glassing point at daylight. I want to be there 15 minutes or 30 minutes before daylight, because I want to sit down. I want to get out my tripod and my binoculars. I want to, put on some layers and get comfortable, so that the very second it's light enough to see, I'm already looking through those binoculars. And I'm not wasting any time, because, you might have a very short window where that bull is out in an avalanche chute, or in some sort of open space feeding, before he turns and walks right back into the timber at daylight. Just being able to maximize those hours, I think, is so important.
Yeah, dude. I think that is probably the best tip that you could give guys, particularly, when it looks like your weather's going to be mild and that sort of thing. And I'm going to just piggyback on it, Ryan, because I think it's key, man. Like, particularly when these bulls get in their little localized little hidey hole. Like, you have the perfect example of an avalanche chute, right? Like, if you're not there right in the prime time, a bull could be coming out feeding on the edge of timber for days. And if there's no snow in that chute where you can glass up tracks or something, which it sounds like that's not the case right now, that bull could go in and out of there, and you could walk under that slide, above that slide. You could go down the other side of the slide. Like, you could, just work your butt off and never see a track or a fresh pile of elk crap. You know what I mean? So you have to see them the way you're describing.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, last year, I was guiding a second rifle hunt, and one morning, we noticed it came across a bull track. It had snowed a few inches the night before, and he fed out of the timber. I'd say 20, 30 yards. You could see where he milled around a little bit, and then you could see where his tracks went right back into the timber that morning. And I think that's pretty typical of, of what these elk are doing that time of year. And, they're not spending, especially like, with the weather, the way it's going to be this next week during first rifle season, they're not going to be a lot on their feet a lot during those, daylight hours. So yeah. And it's easier said than done. It's when it's, in the 20s in the morning, it's hard to get your butt out of bed in the pitch black. And sometimes, if you're looking at maybe an hour or longer hike in the dark to get to wherever you're going to glass in the morning, it's hard to motivate yourself to do that, especially day in and day out on a long, what can be a grueling hunt sometimes. But yeah, just having that persistence to be able to get up and make that hike in the dark and get set up and be on your butt behind the glass before it gets daylight is such a huge key.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I think that's a great tip for guys. And like you said, it can be grueling, and you can do that a couple days and go through all that effort and pain and not see anything a couple days, and then the third day you're looking at the right spot, and then all of a sudden you find yourself with success. So it can be a psychological challenge just as much as a physical one,
Yeah, yep, it really is.
But I'm going to jump to one more, man. So today I'm actually putting together a short little video on my YouTube channel that I was just reflecting on all of the different, over the years, all the different, when we're talking about rifle hunting, all the experiences I had when I was hunting myself or I was guiding a guy and we ended up missing deer or elk, right? Every guide who's guided folks has dealt with this. I shouldn't say every guide and hunter deals with missing, right? And I was thinking about, what are the reasons that people miss? right? I have my own views on it, Ryan, but I want to hear what your thoughts are. Because I think there's a perception out there that people miss for reasons that that maybe is like when you're guiding, you have a unique experience in the sense of like when a shot opportunity arises, you may not have the same adrenaline rush or other kind of psychological things going on that the hunter has, and so you're able to observe that situation from kind of a third party perspective. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any opinions or thoughts of why guys, the reasons why guys miss?
Yeah, I think one of the most easily preventable is of course just familiarity with the weapon. I think I can certainly tell stories. I think most guys can probably tell stories of folks who showed up on a hunt with a weapon they weren't familiar with, and that bit them in the butt somewhere along the hunt. And I've seen that happen at least a couple times. Whether it was a borrowed rifle or just there's something that caused a hang up. And then beyond that though, assuming folks are familiar and practiced with their weapons, I think you mentioned just the adrenaline piece. That's a big factor. And a lot of times, these opportunities, don't come with a lot of time to prepare. One funny thing about elk hunting is that a single moment can change everything. You can be having the most boring, unproductive hunt for 4 days, and then all of a sudden on the 5th day you get an opportunity and you don't have any time to prepare, and that opportunity happens so fast. And I think that it causes folks to rush, and that adrenaline gets going, and they forget their routine. And the more that folks can do to have a routine, and to for example, if you're using something like a bipod or shooting sticks or things like that, I've seen those things screw people up a lot too. Know how to use those things almost just completely with just pure muscle memory. You shouldn't even have to think about it. The more you can practice with those little things and just smooth out that process as much as possible, so that when the adrenaline is pumping and you're not thinking clearly, that you can still go through that process and try and get a good shot off on that animal. And I guess that's my experience with it anyway.
Yeah, I think those are great points, Ryan. And like on the shooting stick thing, bipod thing, I totally agree. And I think one of the practical challenges for people, and this goes for guided clients, but it goes for do-it-yourself guys too, that may not have a great outdoor space to shoot all the time or whatever under kind of Western hunting conditions or whatever you want to call it. They have the equipment. They're comfortable shooting their rifle at a flat range, that sort of thing. And they've had the foresight to get good rests and that sort of thing. But like you're saying, they just don't go through practicing with them. And I mean, a guy can practice in his house. He's going to feel like a dork doing it, but like practice on your TV. You know what I mean? Like how would you sit and shoot off those sticks? How, that all matters a lot, man. I mean, I know the exact situation you're talking about, Ryan, and it's not a knock on people, but you get in situations where it's like, okay, here's the opportunity, and now it's like everything's clacking around, and you can't get you can't get comfortable, all those things, and it's like, oh boy, this is too bad that this is happening right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I've been there too. I mean, I know exactly how that feels.
Yeah, and it's like, oh no, like this is, yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, just a little, like just practicing with those things and getting comfortable with it, I think is huge. And like you say on nerves too, the same thing. Probably the only other thing I would say is that like just don't shoot until you're comfortable. The question I always ask people after they shoot, and I don't know if you do this, Ryan, is like, how did it feel? And I ask them that for lots of different reasons, but a lot of times guys will be like, oh, it just didn't feel good. And I'm thinking, oh, why'd you shoot?
Right.
Yeah. And so it sounds so like naive and weird and such a like basic piece of advice. But if those crosshairs are not staying on the vital area the whole time, don't pull the trigger.
Don't. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but and that's basically exactly what you were saying too. But anyways, man, I think those are valuable for folks. I wish you guys the best. I think you'll have fun with the business just overall. I mean, what a cool business to perfect and grow and everything else. It's gonna be awesome. Do you let people know where they can look you up, man?
Yeah. So the website is budgeslodge.com. And they can also find us on Instagram at Budges Lodge, and we'll try and be good about posting updates and fun stuff throughout the season and even through the off season. And yeah, it's something that we're excited about, and it's it's a, like you said, when we first started the conversation, it's just a unique place. World-class fly fishing. We're on the upper White River and the South Fork of the White, and it's all foot and horse traffic only. Everything's inside the wilderness boundary, both upstream and downstream. There's a lot of river, and just an awesome place to run a summer fly fishing program. We've got wilderness camps out on the river, so folks can stay in the main lodge as well as the wilderness camps. And then as we get into hunting season starting in September, same deal. We'll do horseback trips out of the main lodge, and then we do the wilderness camps as well. So just a lot of fun stuff and exciting stuff, and yeah, we're stoked about it.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for being on, and yeah, have fun this season, man. On my end, guys, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Cliff, CLIFFGRY. Yeah, I took the last letter out of my last name. I have no idea, but now somebody else has the full name. But anyways, or you can get on my YouTube at youtube.com/Cliff Gray. You can subscribe there. But anyways, awesome conversation. I hope it was of value to folks. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Cliff. I appreciate it.